Hey, Wanderer. Long time no whatever. Long time no read your type. How are you doing? Put that down there. This over here. Put this here. This here. You're alive and thriving. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of dust collectors here, and we're on our way to try to sell a lot of them off to. These are things my brothers and I inherited from my parents. My mother died 10 years ago, and my dad died 2 years ago. And then COVID hit. We would have been doing this before, but because of COVID, we didn't do it. So there's more dust, maybe, than there was 2 years ago. But what happened 2 weeks ago was a pipe burst in the basement. So I had to come out here to deal with all of that. And that got us finally off our collective butts and are trying to figure out a way to sell things. You know, many of the things I now learned I can say goodbye to. And if the house is sold, it's easy for me to say goodbye to a lot of this stuff because it sort of belongs in the house. I can't really imagine it being in other people's houses. I mean, that's not what I mean. I don't mind it being in other people's houses. If this house existed in the family, then I'd say, well, we need to have that dining room table because it's been here for 64 years. And we just have to buy a new dining room table. So, and even though the dining room table I hated as a kid because it was crammed in this room, I wish we had moved it into that room where we can all easily sit at it and get up to get more wine or go to the bathroom and sit back down again. Here we're sort of wedged. Only one person really at the head of the table, my mother, could get up and go easily. Everyone else was trapped between two pieces of rather chunky furniture. So it was never really a comfortable dining experience 3 times a year. But when we moved it, when we moved it over there in the middle of that room at a 45-degree angle, we're able to get 6, 8 people at that table maybe even 10, without having our legs removed. You had to sit side saddle. There were 4 people could sit with their legs in front of it, and then the other 4 had to sit side saddle. So it wasn't comfortable. It's a beautiful table, but it wasn't comfortable. But now it might be. But if we end up selling the entire house, we don't need that table. And we don't need a million other things. The memories will always be there. Do you still have your access to or own your family, your childhood home, Nomad? No. Okay, I need to find my power cord here. Well, I mean, a lot of people that I know, and they moved around the country, or they had reasons to move, and you sold it to you still owned it, but so you had a lot of time to say goodbye to it if you wanted to. I sort of haven't been living here other than sort of on 2-week spurts for 40 years almost. So it's sort of been it's turned into a vacation place. So I've never had to wash the windows or paint the walls or vacuum. It was always my mother's or father's job or my brother's job. I just sleep and eat and enjoy it. But my parents, 10 years ago, when my mother was still alive, maybe 12 years ago, my father had a heart surgery, and he lived in a rehab center that he really liked. It had the same view of the river valley that this house has. And while he was recuperating, he thought, wouldn't it be nice to live here? And they had houses that you could single, family, single old person, senior housing. But when he looked into it, it was just thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a month that you'd have to pay to live there on top of buying it. So my parents opted to stay here. And so nothing was ever downsized, just kept getting upsized. And when my brother started living here, he continued to collect things and have things here too. So right now the house is kind of full. So we're starting little by little to start selling some of this stuff. So what pens are you using today? My brother works at a school, and one of his co-workers gave him a box of pens, 4 pens, to give to me. And I forgot to write her a thank you note, which I will do today, and Todd can bring it in tomorrow. But they're all modest pens, the most modest of which is this one. And never inked, never used, price sticker still there for $1, wherever lever filling pen. And it actually, you know, it is a steel nib, but it's actually a little springy. There's a little spring to its step. But it's this, it looks bluer, it looks redder here. It's more orangey red, fire truck red, or even a little more orangey than that here. And then a black Esterbrook, which is perfectly usable and fine. And then a Parker 21, which is perfectly usable, and fill it up with ink, and I'm writing with it, very smooth. It's one of the good 21s. It doesn't have the shitty breakable plastic. It's the one that looks like a 51. And then finally, I guess the nicest one is a gold nibbed Parker 45 Flighter, which I don't think had ever been used either. And it has a big, someone said it was a medium nib, but it seems kind of more broad than medium. It doesn't seem to want to flow all that well, and I think it's, oh, maybe it has one of these piston fill converters, which I don't think works very well. But I've finally figured out one of the things I do not like about these pens. And I don't have this pen with a 51. I don't have it with a 21. I don't have it with a Waterman Stately, but I do have it with these pens where I put the pen down and I start writing and it doesn't write. And the reason it doesn't write is not that it's out of ink. Somehow I rotate it enough so I'm writing just on half of the ball, the side of the ball, rather than having the slit make contact with the paper. And I don't have this problem with a 51. I don't rotate it at all. And I think it's the thinness of this pen that something, maybe in my brain, I'm thinking it's a pencil and I don't have to pay attention to which orientation it's at. But I do notice that with these pens. And if the pen is fine, really fine point, like this one, because the point is really, really fine, it sort of writes almost any orientation because it's so tiny. But if the point is broad, and this is true with the big ball of a point, a spherical point that's really big, it's easy to get the slit to not make contact, to rotate the ball. So yes, that's a sweet spot that normally when you're using a pen that has a regular nib, you can look at it and you can see, okay, well, the nib, I'm writing with it sideways. No wonder it's not working. You know what you're doing. But with a 51 and a sort of a hidden nib, it's not always as easy. But somehow with this particular pen model, I have this problem a lot. And it may be that I'm sloppy and lazy, but I think generally it's because it's so thin that I treat it like it's a pencil. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Yeah, I think it's an accurate story. The only time I have that problem with 51s is if it's a really big ball on the end of the nib. Okay. Bye. Hello. Samuel, are you there? Hello. Hello. Testing 1, 2, 3. I didn't get to the post office today, but I will tomorrow. Melissa, with your pen, do you only want the skyline? Hey, Robin, how are you? Can you hear me? I'm going to show Melissa, I'm going to show Robin how I draw things using light and dark and shadow. So I'm going to move my device and aim down. So Robin can watch. With the axe pen, you want me to send you the axe pen too? Fuck, why is this? My devices are all running out of power here at the same time. Okay, let me do this. I'm moving this device like this, turning the camera, back camera. Okay, good. Need to weigh this down so it doesn't fall down on me. Good. So far, so good. Now I need to use this. Okay. Let's see if I can make this work here. Just a second. Okay, I'm gonna do a grayscale drawing just because it's easier. Okay. Hopefully I won't run out of power. So, Robin, here's what I like. Let's imagine I was drawing a person's face from a selfie. And if they if they're using a flash or looking in the camera or doing whatever they're doing, 9 times out of 10, you're going to see a picture that looks like this. You're going to see an image that has this kind of a thing. Everything is the same value. And that's really, 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 really boring. And so to make it interesting to look at and interesting to draw, I ask people to send me pictures, or I look at things where the light is coming only from one side or from an angle that is not straight ahead. So if the light were coming from, let's say this is looking straight on, and if this one, the light is coming from this angle, that means this half of the face is going to be in shadow, more or less. Right? So already you have the ability to see things in dimensions. There's going to be shadows here, and then there will be highlights on the other side. And then there might be more shadows over here where the nose casts a shadow. That's in shadow. And it becomes way more dimensional. You can do the same thing with, if I was took a picture of an egg that way, with the light hitting the front of the egg, here's the shadow underneath it. That's one way, but that's not very interesting, and it's not very descriptive. If it hit from the side again, there'd be highlights on this side, shadows over on this side, and then the shadow would go that way. And again, you see this could be a flat disc, but this shows that it's dimensional, spherical. So when I'm drawing, I try to, before I do anything, I try to make the subject that I'm drawing, I'll walk around to an angle where I will see shadows. So, or I'll ask someone to send me a new picture of them where they're standing next to the window and the camera is in front of them, but the light comes from the side. So, for example, this is more interesting because there's light sort of from both sides and there's dark in the middle. Is more interesting than that. This is really boring, but this is more interesting. And if there was light only from one side, here I've got windows on both sides of the house that I'm seeing. You're seeing two different things. So let me change my camera again. Back camera. So let's pretend I'm drawing. Now often these days I tend to draw with a dark background and then I build up from the lights, but I'm gonna draw with a medium gray. And I'm using this, I could be using a pencil, or I could be using a pen, or I could be using a iPad like this, but I'm using an iPad like this. So what I do is I start with, if I had a gray piece of paper or a gray background, I would start with the darks. Just trying to see if I can see anything here that's, okay, I'm looking at a typewriter. So it's a typewriter, it's an old typewriter. So I'm just going to map it out here so you can sort of see what it looks like. So here's the carriage. Put a piece of paper in it just so you can see. Okay, so here's a typewriter. Now, what I'm doing is I'm using black. I'm starting with black. The light's coming in this direction. So this area is dark. And I pick, and there's a little dark shadow there, and that's sort of dark here. There's the carriage is dark, but it's also cast a shadow by this piece of paper. And then there's a shadow cast by the machine itself on the table. And I build up, I start with big areas. I'm not worried about every little key. I'll do that later. I work, there's a big square here, there's a square here. This is kind of dark. This is kind of dark. It's a big black underwood. So it's dark. The paper is white. Okay, so what else does this thing have? Well, it has all of the little keys, which again are sort of dark. It has the white paper, so I go back to the white. And it has the paper behind the front paper, it's behind. And then there's little metal bits on each side of these keys, which are the light is hitting. So I'm just drawing the lights. I'm squinting my eyes. I'm looking where the big areas of the light are, where the light is hitting. And there's some nice shiny bits that it's hitting. So there's a little corner here that's hitting the light, so that's really shiny. And now I go back with the black, and there's really dark areas on these metal bits too, which make them look like they're metal. Metal you need both metal, you need both light and dark when you're showing metal, because metal is reflective and it doesn't just reflect light. You have to, if you're drawing a chrome car with chrome trim, you need to show the shiny white of the chrome as well as the shiny black of the reflections. So I start with big areas and then I work to smaller areas. So if I'm drawing a figure, I made that up. There's no typewriter anywhere near me, but I know what they look like. If I'm drawing a figure, again, I'm starting with black. Here's a torso, abs, whatever, leg, junk, arm, head. So if the light's coming from the side, again, depending on how much of an angle it is, if it's just sort of the light's coming from behind, you're only going to see a shadow, highlights on a small part of it. If it's coming more from the side, then essentially you're going to see, more. The junk would cast a shadow, of course, but you'd and then, I could, make it light and then go back in with dark. Now to do this with paint, you can do this with paint, you can do it with an iPad, you can do it with pen and ink. It's hard to, with pen and ink, it's hard to go back and make something lighter because, so you sort of have to plan some things ahead when you're using pen. But you see that I could go in very detail and draw the little nips and the abs and the ribs and the neck and the ear canal and the nose and the nostril and the big pearly white teeth. All of that I can do later, but I don't do that later. I do it all at once. Sometimes I'll start working on a detail and realize, well, I've completely screwed that up. So I'll go back and, darken it all up and redo it again. But the idea is to break down whatever it is you're drawing into parts. And each part will probably have, if it's lit well, each part will have a light side and a dark side. So, if I had a still life of bottles in a champagne glass and liquor bottles in a champagne glass, and the light's coming from the side, these bottles are going to be half lit and half dark. And of course, they're transparent, so you've got that nightmare to deal with. But, here we've already made them look dimensional. But I'm not. It's very, very simple. Now I go, if I looked at this bottle and said, oh my God, it's a Jim Beam Scotch bottle and they've got a label that looks like this and a thing and a cap that looks like that. And, I'd never get done. I'd never get it done. I have to start with the big things first. So Give me something to draw, either one of you, Robin or Melissa, and I'll try to imagine how I'd draw it. Now, adding color, it's the same thing. I start with, this is kind of red, so I'm just going to put red everywhere. Well, part of it is lighter red, part of it's oranger red, part of it's kind of purpley red, but I start with red. Okay, so Robin, tell me what else to draw. Robin, what are you drawing with? I can see myself. Yes, I know I'm running out of power. An apple. Okay, I'll draw an apple. So, an apple is red. It's kind of heart shape, between a heart shape and a round shape. So there's little dimples at the bottom. Okay, 9/10 of everyone in the world would say that's an apple, or maybe a tomato. No, an apple. Tomatoes are more round. Okay. Light from the side will cast a shadow over here. Light from the side will cast a shadow here and there, maybe. Now, it's not dark all the way to the end. That's one of the things that you learn when you're trying to draw round things, dimensional. It's light, medium, dark, and usually there's a little tiny bit of a lighter area right on the edge, and that's the reflected light from objects that are over here. It's not as strong as this light, but it is strong enough to cause a little bit of a highlight there. And also, there might be a little tiny bit of a shadow over here because there's light coming from over here. And then there's highlights. You want to throw some highlights on here. Now, I sometimes set my sliding thing here so I build it up slowly. Other times I don't have time and I move it all the way to the next thing, and it will get lighter immediately. So using Sketch Club, the reason I like Sketch Club is I use essentially one tool, and it's called the vector tool. And what it does, I've turned the gradient off so you can see what I'm doing. What it does is you start with your finger or your pen and you move it around, and it fills up the shape with whatever color you chose. Now, most of the time I have it set at gradient, so where I first started, it's darker, brighter, more dense, and then where further away it is, it gets shadowy. So I tend to like that kind of thing better. But why I like this in the first place is it allows me to draw really fast. I can just completely fill up the thing really quickly. If I use a pen or a brush or other sorts of things, it takes a long time to fill it in. Like, I don't have that time. So I use this tool, and I don't know whether other drawing apps have this tool. I don't use constant opacity. Well, no, I'm always switching. I'm always playing with the opacity down here. And if I'm using other tools other than the vector tool, I will also change the point size. But here I normally just use the opacity, and I rarely have it set at full, but sometimes I do. Just at the last minute I'll move it to full so I can just add my really bright highlights. But normally I have it set at about half. So that's at half. Here it's at a quarter. You know, I have to do it a bunch of times. And here at full, it's bright right from the get-go. And this is bright red you're seeing. I don't know, it comes up as yellow. So I'm playing with that all the time. And that's how I can draw as quickly as I do. Let me just find a drawing that I did. That one is of a naked person. We don't want that one, do we? No. Let's pick one that we can show here. Here's a drawing I did of a bunch of plastic bags that are here in the house, and they contain oriental rugs, and they're just in plastic bags to keep the moths away. So the drawing, you can see how I started that one. And maybe the whole drawing took, I don't know, 15 minutes, 10 minutes to do it. But I'm adding the lights, some really sparkly lights now, and then I go in with, often I'll just take a color and I'll fill in. It's kind of like paint by number, the way I do a lot of this, where I'll just use the same red and fill in everywhere. And then I'll adding some blue highlights here where the reflection of the window came in. Now I'm adding a little bit more and then I'm done. So it's this lantern, you know, I started with black, adding the color. And I'm not involved in too many details. The details are like the last thing I do. And I might just pick one little tiny area that I'm going to turn into a fun part. Naked bodies, naked bodies, naked bodies. Here's a good thing that you can do. I just crumpled a piece of paper, a white piece of paper up, and then kind of flattened it out. And I just drew it. You know, they're just triangles of different colors. And then I rotated it a different direction and rotated it again, and it's just the same piece of paper. I didn't add any more crinkles. I just moved it from one to the other, and that's a good exercise. Trying to get all of the get past all the naked guys I draw. Here's some I did of watches. And these are from a Facebook group where people collect pocket watches. And I just took I used the photographs they posted, and it's just a fun way to look at an object, and you zoom in. I mean, the pocket watch is that big, and this is part of the pocket watch, so this is probably an inch across. So naked people, naked people, naked people. You're in here somewhere, I'm sure. Don't worry, I won't show your beautiful body. And here's, clouds. And clouds move fast. So you need to move fast when you're doing clouds. This is inside a car. No, that's inside a bus. It was a bus trip I took. Or naked people. Here's part of a bulldozer. And drawing the entire bulldozer is a pain in the butt. But drawing just a part of it is fun and easy. I'm going to go to, here's another, this is a bag of nickels. Ziploc bag of nickels. And here's how I drew that. I like how my head is in the bag. So the bag, there's the bag, and then eventually I get to the nickels. Come on, nickels. There they are. Nickels. So anything, you don't have, your subject matter does not have to be beautiful. I love drawing parts of cars. And here's our building in Boston reflected in the cars. It's a beige building with aqua trim. So there's the building. So if you just draw a part of something, it's a lot easier than drawing the entire thing. And if you draw an ugly thing, like this underpass with puddles and chain link fence, it's like you're not going to insult anyone by drawing it too fat, because it's a chain link fence, for God fuck's sake. These are flowers I drew. These are all dying. These are on my dad's casket 2 years ago, and when they were done and brought back home, I ended up just drawing them. These are the flowers that we bought at the store before the bouquet was made. Here's an interior of a garage with lawnmowers and a boat with a tarp. Again, here's a bunch of papers on a chair. The subject matter does not have to be profound. And the less profound it is, the more fun I think you'll have doing it. Yeah, you can do a sunset if you want to, but they've been done. You know, draw the cracks in a patio. They're very underappreciated. There's a bridge, a crumpled up dollar bill is really fun to draw. This time I captured the zooming in and out I was doing as I was drawing it. This is more what it looks like because I'm always zooming in and out. If you get car sick and throw up, I'm not responsible. Here's another one. So a crumpled up dollar bill is fun. Garden furniture, cars, cabbage. More dollar bills. There's a stairway in a library in Cambridge. Fire extinguisher. That's exciting. So anyway, I think you get the picture. I'll be right with you. Would you like me to invite you in, Robin? Here, hold on. Click on this. You can join me right now. Paste. You want to join me, Robin? Click on that button and your camera will go on and I'll say hello. If you don't have clothes on, that's fine. We're all adults. You don't have to show your junk. You can just have it face your face. This is really bad lighting. Light's coming from too many directions. That's better. So Melissa, did you want both the pens, the X pen and the other one, the Skyline, or do you want to just go with the Skyline and imagine the X pen and write your story? Oh, thanks. It's really fun. Normally, I mean, sometimes I get other artists on here. Sometimes I get pen collectors. That's what most of the people are. They collect fountain pens. But just the one, okay. I have plenty of pens that are like that, that have huge areas that were dug out, gouged out by people who wanted to obliterate the memory of the other person. So, but the skyline, hello, Will Hodge. I was trying to show Rob and Sam how I draw Yeah, I was drawing digitally, showing how I go from how I refine the drawing. I start out with big, broad areas of color or value, and then I work toward the small and more detailed and more exact if I want to do that kind of a thing. And depending on what I'm drawing, if I've done a lot of drawings of, I'll just say it right now, naked men who show off in one way or the other, usually the other. No, they show off, and sometimes, depending on the image that they send me or their physique or something, I will draw very angularly or very boldly, and other times I'll be very subtle. And sometimes I'll draw in black and white, even though the picture's in color. Sometimes I'll draw in vibrant, crazy colors. So it's, I never really know completely how something is going to turn out. Sometimes I'll draw, sometimes I draw people in person and I start drawing them sorry. In the internet. Yeah, yeah, lighting is important. And, Suraj, I've drawn him so many times, 10 years ago, 11 years ago first, and I drew him on paper with white pencil on black paper. And then more recently using my iPad, but also on paper. And he's a very interesting model. He's very graceful and he knows exactly how to pose. And he's a beautiful subject to draw. And Russell has drawn him as well. And we've come up with lovely drawings of Suraj. Drawing a chicken bone on a greasy plate with mashed potatoes and gravy still there was fun too, in a different way. And Miss Marilyn, darling, will you can remain modest if you'd like. I don't want you to break a camera or to break the internet. I have drawn many interesting people, though, in the past, many of whom are not people that most people would think were attractive. There's one guy I drew who had some sort of spinal issue, and he was on crutches and had leg braces, and it looked like his legs stuck out. You know, this is how normal legs work. Normal legs connect to the torso like this. They're essentially down from the torso. His legs were like this. You know, they were splayed. His hips were screwy, and I think his back was screwy. There was just some sort of whole screwiness in his character. And they weren't quite like that, but they were out. They weren't like this, they were out. And so he was very bow-legged. I imagine when he would walk, he could never get his feet together. I imagine his feet couldn't be closer than maybe a foot or two apart because of the way his legs were coming out of his torso. And he had a lot of balls, as it were, to show off his, what most people would say was broken body online. And I've had other people that are quite large, quite skinny, quite big, quite small, quite everything. And I look at that body, whatever I'm looking at, whether it's a crumpled up piece of paper, an uneaten apple, or an apple core, or a chicken leg, or a man with some sort of spinal issues, and I try to draw the subject with respect and or dignity, and or try to make the drawing look interesting or beautiful. And now with a crowbar. Of course we can pry your legs apart with a crowbar. So there's there's some people that are quite large, and they like their largeness and they love showing off their largeness. And for me to try to hide that part of them would be not something they'd want. So I take the largeness and I emphasize the qualities that I think they'd like. So I do hide the dirty bits with smiley faces when I post them, but they are not drawn originally with the smiley faces. The smiley faces, if you want to see what they look like, any drawing looks like without a smiley face, just let me know which one and I can probably send you the original. Well, there's nothing wrong with penises. As far as I'm concerned, we've got, naked dames are way ahead of us, from the Venus de Willendorf to Playboy magazine to the English tabloids. Women's junk are seen everywhere, and I think it's time for men to catch up. The Greeks did a good job, and then they stopped, and we got prudish. So more winkies, in my book, are okay. If nothing else, than to get these prudes off their high horse. That's my thought. Someone had the nerve to say I had a bad hair day. My hair days are never bad. They're all identical. It's fig leaves. Not olive. Some lucky boys need the entire hosta leaf. Well, I think fig leaves are the traditional term they use for censorship. Where's the fig leaf on that thing? Put the fig leaf on. I think the actual leaves that are used, the shape of the leaf, it might be a fig leaf. Let me just look up what fig leaves look like. They may be more acanthus leaves or something. Where's my interweb? Fig leaf. Fig leaf. Yeah, I guess a fig leaf is pretty much what they look like. They do seem like they would cover most. See, now he's not using a fig leaf. That is not a fig leaf. That's something else. A fig leaf of the type worn by Adam. According to the caption on this. Well, I'm sure that that's an awfully big fig leaf that person has.
here.
Yeah.
Can I let the cats out?
Yeah.
Is the door shut down there?
Yep.
You got your beer.
Oh, thank you. And did you find some glue? Sure did. Okay. Good. Thank you. Perfect.
It's the regular.
Regular. Elmer's Glue All. Stronger formula. I'm going to make some fish out of this box. But I need to wait for Mousie to get in here because she likes watching me make the fish. Okay, I'm having lunch, so we'll see you all later. Toodaloo.